We're Blake and Brittany, and we live in southern Ecuador.
We have jobs, well, remote jobs with US-based companies. We got them from here, Ecuador, and it was not easy.
Searching for remote jobs from overseas is like standing out in the rain while you wait for your dog to poop.
It's like getting each individual tooth numbed by the dentist.
Like constantly smelling a horrible smell that no one else can smell.
In this video, we're going to share our tips for finding remote work at a US-based company from overseas.
This video is for you if you too are an expat in need of employment, and if you're also not necessarily a rock star applicant.
If you're pretty solid in a remote-friendly field, especially something really niche, then you may not suffer the same painful reality. But if, like us, you've never been headhunted, well, you can use any tips that you can get.
We don't have some sort of magic formula to offer you. The reality is finding remote work while overseas is hard, and we think it's getting harder.
After we got settled here, we decided to look for part-time work to go alongside the farm work and things like that. We naively thought it would be easy coming out of COVID when everything was remote.
But it was not easy. It is, however, possible. And we want to share what we learned during that year-long search with you. And here it is. It sucks.
All right, so S for secure the necessary technology.
Okay, if you are just an average Joe applicant, no employer is going to consider you if you don't meet the technical requirements. If you don't have good internet, figure that out now before you start the job search.
The right sort of computer setup for the jobs you're applying for is important. A microphone, a way to make calls to the US, a quiet workspace.
We use what? How do we make calls to the US?
Multiple options. Through my current employer, I've got a voice over IP service that I use, as well as on our personal cell phones, we have a voice over IP service we use that mimics our US phone numbers and uses US cellular like anything else.
It's called Magic Jack.
Magic.
So you can make that work, but figure it out. You also may have some potential issues depending on where you live. We are in the countryside. We have unique kind of struggles that go along with that, especially if you're on a call to a client or to your employer. Our struggles include roosters, donkeys, there's a horse next door currently, and one of our dogs sounds like a cow. So we've had to mitigate those problems as much as we can. There's not much we can do about the roosters and the donkeys, and the horse for that matter.
Horse.
But we did come up with a clever way to make Axel, our cow dog, a little more well-behaved during calls. So we invented the peanut butter shoe, which is just like it sounds. An old child's shoe. We stuffed it full of peanut butter, and he's happy for quite a while and does not make his cow bellows. So
The Ecuadorian version of the Kong toy. Right.
yeah.
Okay, and we also had to get very creative here in Ecuador during the blackouts when we were experiencing hours-long blackouts during the day due to the power outages due to the drought we had. And so in our case, that was solar panel, that was a battery backup, that was redundant internet that we had here. Not only did we have our fiber, we also had Starlink. But we had to do those things, right, to mitigate in order to work from home.
Yeah, we had to be creative with our charging and really intentional to keep devices charged. But that's kind of a worst case scenario, and it was totally doable as long as we were on top of it. Wherever you are, you're going to have your own issues to mitigate. If you're in a high rise, maybe in a large city somewhere, you might have noise from neighbors, you might have traffic to contend with. So think about those things and do what you can to make them non-issues.
Yeah, and a lot of these softwares today include pretty good noise cancellation. Not always, and not all
You
of
do
them.
get asked about the occasional rooster, right?
Yes, I used to get, when I worked out of my shop area, the rooster was way too loud. I had to move. Because, is that a rooster? Oh, yeah, the neighbor's rooster. But that was
What can you do?
Yeah.
So don't assume a potential employer will love you so much that they're going to want to help you figure all that out. it's much more likely they won't consider you at all. So do the work ahead of time so you can ensure them that you're good to go.
Letter U, unique yourself. Make yourself interesting to your potential employer. You are interesting after all because you moved overseas. How many applicants live on a coffee farm in the Andes? So get that in front of someone's eyes, and because you really want to be memorable.
Especially for online work.
Especially for
when
online
you'll
work.
never potentially meet your employer in person.
Very likely you'll never meet face to face.
So you want to make that personal connection whenever you can. And one way we recommend doing that is by going onto LinkedIn. Make sure you have a LinkedIn account. Not that you need to keep a page up to date necessarily.
But you should.
But it's also really good for sort of spying on weeding out potential companies that you'd want to work for. You can find HR representatives under their personnel pages and send them a message using the LinkedIn messaging feature. Think of some sort of intelligent question to ask them. It's something that puts your name in their mind. Tell them that you're a recent applicant. And rather than just coming out and saying like, hey, I live in Ecuador, do you hire here? You can say that, in maybe a smarter way, like, oh, I'm a US citizen. I'm currently based, however, out of Latin America. And you can ask, what their policy is regarding that.
Yeah, and if there's an HR email or some form of contact, send a follow-up after your application with a question, with an acknowledgement of your application. And said in today's world, it's all digitized. It's all running through a sorting system, right? A computer. So it's very unlikely that your application is going to get seen by someone, by a recruiter, by anyone. And so make sure that you kind of alert people to your presence, that you've actually submitted.
C, cast a wide net.
This relates to the type of job you're applying for, even the field, right? And also where and how you look for jobs.
So Blake's background is in emergency management, and that is not a remote-friendly field. So while we did look for emergency management jobs, we also tried to think about what fields are sort of adjacent to emergency management that might be more remote-friendly. So we searched for jobs in intelligence and even things like disaster response, humanitarian work, anything that maybe overlapped with emergency management, and we applied for those jobs as well. We also looked at kind of what he did more than what his title was, and he did a lot of interacting with stakeholders.
Natural customer service.
Yeah, even in the government sector, he did a lot of that kind of work. And
even in the government.
So we thought, well, we should look for customer support jobs because there are a lot of remote customer support jobs, and we can probably pull that out of his resume and make it stand out.
We'd look on lots of different job boards, some geared specifically towards expats, but the best and most navigable was Indeed, which has lots of remote search modifiers. So here's how we would kind of do a search.
So first thing we do is we would set the filters. We would click on remote, and we would look at the time since our last search and make sure we weren't getting older jobs, because there's really no sense in applying for older listings more than a day or two. And depending, maybe we would set a salary expectation. And then we would go through our list of search terms, and we literally just had a list and go one after the other. We relied on keywords more than job titles. Some of those terms were designed to pick out potential work from abroad positions, and no matter the position, I just wanted to get it in front of our eyes. So here are some few search terms you can use that'll just kind of be indicators that a job may be open to having applicants from across the world. For example, anywhere in the world, work from anywhere, remote first, that's a big one. Remote friendly, fully remote, love that one. We would also put in Ecuador, Latin America, Eastern time zone, and then there's one, dispersed team. That's a good indicator. And we would also search for contract positions since we didn't need benefits.
And when looking for positions themselves, don't just search for the job title or the field. We'd find emergency management listings by searching for things like emergencies, disasters, preparedness, natural disasters, hazard mitigation, disaster response, that sort of thing. So search by keywords / specific vocabulary and search by skills. Letter K, know when it's not worth it. So
you can and you should weed out job listings that aren't worth your time. There's no room for wishful thinking here. Like, no one is going to make an exception for you. And of course, that's not necessarily true. Someone could absolutely make an exception, but it's not likely, and again, not worth it.
Here are some indicators that you shouldn't even bother.
Applying for a job, that is.
Applying for a job, yes.
If it says remote US only, if they specify US only, they mean US only. Also, if it says US residents, or if they put a distance from a certain city, it can be a really fantastic job, but again, they're not going to make an exception for you.
Government jobs, generally, healthcare jobs, real estate jobs, education, and specifically where you're dealing with student information. There's laws against privacy laws. Insurance jobs, same deal. Pretty much all fields we found, these are all fields that we found unlikely to hire overseas.
Now again, there will be some job, you'll be, hey, I got a job in that field. Well, fantastic. Just in our experience, we got like zero interest, or in some cases we're told flat out, like, we can't offer you this job because of your location. So we just stopped applying for pretty much all jobs in those fields. Also, any job that has a security clearance, highly unlikely to hire you from overseas.
Any job that lists travel as a requirement, unless it's in your specific region, is not going to hire you unless you're very fancy and important.
The date of the job posting. All but the most niche jobs go fast. We learned there was no sense in applying for anything that had been posted more than a few days before.
Letter S, size.
A lot of companies have blanket policies against hiring overseas. You can get an idea of this ahead of time before bothering to submit an application. So I definitely go to the company website and look at their other job postings. If they have a whole bunch of jobs all over the world, and especially if those are indicated to be remote jobs, then that's really promising. If they don't, then probably not. You can go back to LinkedIn again and look at their other employees, and it'll show you where they are in the world. And that's really useful, because if there are 200 employees at a company and they're all in the United States, you are not going to be the one employee they hire outside of the United States.
All the interest that we got as applicants was primarily from small businesses. They're more willing to be flexible, to think outside of the box, less likely to have a policy, but more willing to consider it, a more personal hiring process, right? We both, Brittany and I, got hired by very small companies, and we're convinced that that was the best shot.
Yeah, bigger companies often won't even consider it. They have their policy, it comes from up above, and they've got tons of applicants, and they're not going to consider you.
I got pretty far with a company who did hire overseas and had no issue initially with Latin America, but they were a big company. And the fact that they didn't have any direct representation in Ecuador means that I wasn't able to move on in the interview process. And so
it's like, why can't you be the direct representative? You know, you can start, but no, they had employees in Colombia, but not in Ecuador. And to us, it's like, why does that matter? But it does. So
beware of it.
Yeah. All right, so a lot of people recommend not telling prospective employers that you're overseas, or even just flat out lying about your location. And with a VPN, I mean, theoretically, you can do that. They say it's not really any of their business, but we are proponents of upfront honesty for a number of reasons. For one thing, if it does come out that you're abroad, and your employer is not happy about that, you know, you can get fired and have to start this whole process over again, and that's not fun. So one big reason for honesty.
Well, yeah, and you don't want to burn bridges, and you don't want to be dishonest. But also, it's not something that we think, honesty is not something we think should be compromised, even for something this high stakes, right? Is like finding a job. So we were always upfront about our location.
Well, I got it in the conversation as soon as possible, so we weren't wasting our time or their time. Yeah.
So it may have meant more rejections for us, but it also meant more peace of mind. And you want to be able to share about your life in your chosen country, not pretend you're still in suburban USA. Where you live is a huge part of who you are, right? And there is an employer out there that will appreciate that.
Okay, and this doesn't really fit into our acronym, but when you're looking for work, really think about your priorities and the lifestyle you want for yourself. We didn't move to Ecuador just to spend all day sitting in front of a screen. We've got the farm, we've got commitment in the community, in our family. So both of us working part-time suits our life better than either of us working full-time.
So consider, in that regard, different shifts in schedules and potential implications for your lifestyle. Ultimately, being able to eat and pay your bills is always a good thing. But maybe you look for an overnight shift, or maybe you want the flexibility to work just a few days a week. Your preference does factor into your search, no matter how much you need the work.
So finding a remote job from overseas really does suck. So give yourself lots of grace during the process and believe things will work out just like they're supposed to.
We hope this video helps you as you plan for your own job search, if you're planning to do that. We want you to like it, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe to Average Family Abroad. So thanks for watching.